Welcome to No Room for Phonies, episode 88. And this one is a tribute to
mothers,
careers,
careers,
and hurricanes.
And
we welcome our friend Tabitha Henrik.
Mm-hmm.
And she gives some really, really vulnerable stories, and she really it's a really touching,
but very touching, but also very encouraging for all of us to kind of find our way forward. And
yeah. So the big quote is, "How do we show children love? Each in our own way. We are a shower of gifts and a heavy rain of lessons." So,
that's a good.
And that's from Braiding Sweetgrass, which is the book that I've been reading.
Book, yeah.
It's an indigenous stories, mostly around plants. But anyway, she gives a lot of insight. She talks a lot about motherhood because she's talking about Mother Earth.
Okay, yeah.
So anyway,
excellent.
Yeah. So please enjoy the next several moments with our good friend Tabitha Henrik.
Yeah, lots of laughs too.
Yes. Welcome to No Room for Phonies. This is episode 88, and we are Zooming with my new friend, Charles's longer friend, I never want to say old friend, Tabitha. And we're going to talk about staying focused and sane through motherhood and careers, and apparently a hurricane at some point. So I thought it'd be cool if you just started by saying like how you guys can talk about how you met and how you became friends. That would be kind of cool for people. The story.
I don't remember the details except that I went down to. Did we know each other online before I went?
We did, and I remember the very first time that I saw your screen name. We had signed up for Mary Beth Temple's how to be a designer class or something like
so
that.
You were in that course too.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's when I first met you, and I cannot remember your username, but it was something sassy like
Stitch Stud.
Yeah, Stitch Stud. I'm like, Stitch Stud, come on, who's he think he is? And I was all like, this guy, what an ego. And then I met you and realized, I'm like, this is
No
complete
ego.
opposite
No
of
ego.
what I thought.
I'm trying to live up to it. So we met at a yarn convention in person at the first yarn convention in Columbus, Ohio. No, were you at the Colorado? Oh, no, the Phoenix, Arizona. The Phoenix, Arizona one was my first one.
Was it really?
Yeah.
You went to Phoenix, Arizona? Where was I? Like just home with the children, working?
The children were older already, but you were working.
I swear we met before Phoenix. I thought Phoenix was later.
Okay, then Columbus would have been.
I think it was Columbus.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
So, and then I kind of got invited into the one clique or
the bad kids circle.
The bad and cool kids circle. So I learned a lot about designing, a lot about the yarn industry, and a lot of other stuff, which stays in Columbus, Ohio.
That's right.
What happened there stayed there.
I just saw a picture of that time. There was one year my mom went with us, and I just saw they flashed up on my timeline not too long ago. The pictures of all of us, like around dinner.
That's good. So you met through the yarn industry, but I was just on your website like just not too long ago today because I happened to see it at the bottom and I should have been on it before, but whatever. And like you're like way more than like yarn and design and
I do all the things.
Like words are your thing, right?
I think so. Yeah, words are my thing. The written word, not the talking word. I'm not that great at the speaking.
I was looking for something for like the advertisement for this, and I was looking for something that said words are my superpower, because that's kind of like when I read the whole thing, like you've had some really interesting experiences like editing and
ghostwriting too.
What's that?
Ghostwriting?
I've done a little bit of ghostwriting. Technically, you could count almost all of the writing that I do for Sweet Georgia kind of as ghostwriting, because I write all of the product copy, almost everything you see on the website.
Okay.
I had my hands in it.
Often in the voice of them. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's good.
Yes, and I've written some blog posts as a ghostwriter for people, hoping to one day get into novels ghostwriting. That would be fantastic. But I
I should
also,
tell you my story and you could make it into a novel.
we could totally do that.
Actually, I'm not.
she would love it.
I am not kidding you, actually, because my family history and story, like, is really
Yeah.
like it just happened to come up at the Easter dinner table, and I think my kids were even like, "Really, mom? Like, really?" I don't think so, mom, but they are kind of used to the story. That
Yeah.
you might have a job here, like, just like
That'd be
that.
awesome.
Anyway, so
We could totally
ghostwriting.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, ghostwriting. I do a lot of editing, copy editing, line editing. I love developmental editing, which is novel based, looking at the big picture breakdown of the way a story structure works and characterization.
And what should be in each chapter kind of a thing? That
Uh,
sort of thing?
Yes, and making sure the story flows the way it should, in a way that attracts the reader and keeps the reader engaged.
Yeah.
It looks over pacing issues. So it's really like big picture developmental editing is. And then you get down into the nitty-gritty of line editing, which is sentence flow and syntax and all that good stuff. And then you get even farther down into copy editing, which is spelling and grammar and
I laugh because you said there's something on your website about the comma.
the Oxford comma. I will
Yes.
fight you over it. Yeah.
Wait, are you pro or against?
Pro. That
Good.
Oxford comma better be there.
Awesome.
Well,
we are on the same team.
I just know because my editing experience is editing report cards in elementary school. So if you are thinking like some of my colleagues who shall remain nameless didn't even bother reading them. They just signed them and sent them. But I edited, and some of the biggest debates I've had with teachers would be over commas because there needs to be a comma there. No, there doesn't. Yes, there does.
Well, it really just depends on the style guide that you use. So the Oxford comma falls into the Chicago Manual of Style. And then the other one, oh goodness,
APA?
I should know it. Yeah, that
MLA.
one. Yeah, that one is usually not Oxford comma. So it just depends on
I'm going
kind
to
of
say that elementary teachers are not using any kind of
any style guide.
they're just,
Yeah.
what do you call that when you just write what you think?
Stream of consciousness.
Stream of consciousness. That's pretty much what an elementary report card is.
Yeah.
And often they don't even use the right name or pronoun.
Or pronoun.
Now I wonder what they'll do with
now,
these pronouns. But
Yep.
anyway.
Because they did a lot of copy and paste, and so
yeah.
Yeah. And then a parent will call and say, "Why is my kid being called a he all the way through it, and they're actually a she?" And I'm like, "That's called editing, and I do my best." But some schools I would have to read like 400 and something report cards, so it is natural that you might. And I'm not an editor, really.
Right.
So But anyway, I laughed when I saw that comma thing because, oh my goodness.
Well, one other little aside. So in Canadian newspapers, we don't use the OU spelling for like color and honor and neighbor. We use the US spelling of just OR, but we also don't use the Oxford comma in newspapers. And I asked why sometime. And if you add up all the U's and commas that you take out, you increase the real estate for advertising by like 5%.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And newspapers and magazines, they follow that, whatever that other style guide is. So they use that other style guide. It's more appropriate for news and magazine. But I always wondered if it had something to do with SEO use as well, because it's more commonly to search for OR rather than OUR.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm American, and all I do, I have to correct myself from writing Canadian now, like, because I usually only write Canadian these days.
I was very intrigued by your website. So when I start advertising for the podcast, this episode, I actually, in the one that I put, which I'll send to you, I put your website on there. So that's so people can go have a look because it's got a lot of cool stuff on it. And if you are a creative, you'll find it really, like, especially if you're, if you're a creative of any kind, you'll find the
Her
website really,
website is awesome.
your website is really awesome. So I wanted you to share just the hurricane story.
Oh, the hurricane story. So I got married 2 days after a hurricane hit, and it really is the perfect sum of my entire life. It even relates to how my oldest child her due date was April Fool's Day, and she was born on April Fool's Day. So I just feel like that's just the epitome of my life. So we grew up on the coast of North Carolina, which is pretty much hurricane country, and it was September 99, and Hurricane Dennis had already come through like 2 or 3 times. So Hurricane Dennis came through, became a nor'easter, came back around, and kind of did this like 3 times.
Wow.
And like every time it did, because we were coastal, we'd have a little bit of flooding. So we had to replant the flowers in the yard where we were getting married like 3 times. But then they said Hurricane Floyd was coming, and it was 2 days before or 3 days before the wedding. And at the time when it made landfall, I believe it was a Cat 5. It was one of the most expensive, damaging hurricanes since the Civil War for North Carolina at that time. So anyway, we evacuated from the coast to Raleigh, which is the middle. So my aunt and cousins were there. My Granny Esther, which is my great aunt, she was coming down from Connecticut, supposed to be making the cake, so she had to stop wherever she was. Who else did we have? We had my sister. We had all the animals, my mom, my dad, all of us, and we all cram into our 2 cars and our little Class C camper, and we load all the wedding stuff and all the pasta stuff and all of the things, like all, the clothing, all the things. And we evacuated to Raleigh. And let's see, it took about 2.5 hours to get to Raleigh. That's normal. It's about how long it takes. It took us close to 18 hours to get home, because when we started driving back home, the flooding all the way up towards Raleigh was so bad that we would get into like Kingston and the highway would be completely flooded, like completely closed down, and the police would be like, we can't let anybody through. So one of our first stops, we're like in a Winn-Dixie parking lot, and my mom's going around, are you a preacher? Are you a preacher? Because she's getting married come hell or high water. But like we went into Winn-Dixie, and because we had our camper, and all these people in the parking lot are stranded there because nobody can get anywhere. So we went into the Winn-Dixie, bought hot dogs and stuff. So we're feeding people, cooking hot dogs out of the camper and everything. So we made it through that. The water went down just enough that they let us go through. We stopped someplace else. God, I can't even remember the locations anymore. And we were there for hours, and we thought for sure we'd be there overnight. And it was like dark. And then all of a sudden the police come knocking on the door of the camper and say, if you're going to go, you go right now. And I just remember driving through the floodwaters and the waters hitting the side of my car. And I'm like, oh my God, I know this is not right. I taught disaster preparedness. You're not supposed to go in water. But we made it through. I think we got back to our homes of 3 o'clock in the morning, somewhere around there. Let's see, it's 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Our wedding was on Saturday. So, and then not only did we get home, but one of the 150-year-old trees had fallen down, blocking the whole front of my mom's house where we were getting married. So they had to go through the bathroom windows to get in and go to sleep. And then that Friday morning, 7 a.m., 6 a.m., I don't even remember what time, the biker club that we were very good friends with down the road, and all showed up, start with their chainsaws, started cutting down the tree, because they knew that we've got a wedding to get ready for. When you have people named Mad Dog and Psycho and Orangutan replanting mums in the garden bed for you.
I told you it was a good friend.
I mean, can you get any better? So Friday morning, we went to the courthouse to go get our marriage license, because we had planned to do that Wednesday, but because of all the hurricanes.
And they told you were too close to your wedding day?
No, they said the courthouse was closed.
Oh.
We couldn't get our marriage license. So we went to the next county over, which is New Bern, across the Neuse River, and walked into the courthouse, and the lady's all like, honey, you can't get married in another county and with a marriage license from our county. We were like, "So what do we do?" She was like, "Well, the magistrate's across the street." So we got the magistrate. Literally grabbed two people off the side of the street to be witnesses and got married on the sidewalk in front of the New Bern, the Craven County courthouse, so that we could have a marriage license that was legal. So we got married on the 17th. We went home. Everybody's like, the pig that we were supposed to have for pig picking, it was floating somewhere down the Runus River because the pig picking place got flooded. The FEMA had taken over the fire department, so my mom like marches in there and she's all like, "I don't care where you go, but get the hell out, and because this is where the party is, like that's where the reception's supposed to be." And not only did they pack up and move their stuff out for a while, they even helped clean and decorate. So
oh, there you go.
but we come back home and we're like, do we tell anybody that we're already married? We don't even have to do all this other stuff.
But you pulled a Harry and Meghan before
That's
it was
right.
cool.
Exactly. So when we told everybody that we were already married, everybody, all we could do was laugh. I mean, just everybody could laugh. My mom went into the Piggly Wiggly and the Food Lion to go get food to feed people since we had no pig. She's in there buying up all the chicken and the beer, whereas everybody else like stocking up on the milk and the bread, right? So we feed the fire. The fire department helped. We fed because I was a EMT at the time, so we had a bunch of our rescue friends come over, and the people that could make it through. My sister, my middle sister, she got stranded in Florida, wasn't able to make it because all the flights were canceled.
Right.
Because the airport was underwater. I mean, it was crazy. Yeah. My middle sister didn't make it. One of my bridesmaids was flooded out. She couldn't make it. My great aunt making the cake, she ended up, because she had to stop at all these different places for the flooding, she ended up making a piece of the cake or decorating a piece of the cake at like every single stop. But she made it in like just in time. My grandparents, so Saturday morning, we're like, the sun's there, we're getting married no matter what. I show up with a procession of motorcycles on the back of my dad's motorcycle. We have a fire truck in our procession. We have an ambulance in our procession. And so we all drive down the road, and I pull up in the yard, and as we're pulling up for me to get ready to walk down the aisle, here comes running the magistrate who made it through floodwaters, the photographer who made it through floodwaters, my maid of honor who made it through floodwaters, and my grandparents from Illinois. Like literally, we're like just getting there because the flooding was so bad. But it ended up, the photographer kept saying at the reception, "I've just never seen just so many happy people. Like everybody's just so happy. Usually everybody's so stressed out or bored, and she's like, everybody here is like partying." So it was just, I'm like, because we've literally been through hell and high water.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I just think of like stories of people planning weddings, and if this little detail doesn't work and that doesn't work,
nothing worked.
And so there's a lesson there that should be written into some kind of a book, because that's a lesson in like, give it up, girl. It is what it is, right?
And not many people can say they got married twice in 2 days after.
No, absolutely not. Oh, that is a very good story. That I can picture all that in my mind. So that is a very good story. So I'm going to ask you, after that traumatic moment that you got through all happy, how do you sum up motherhood in 5 words?
The worst and best years of your life.
Yes. Absolutely. I just read something today in a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a great book. It's indigenous lore, basically. It's a woman writing this book, and she said the tragedy of parenthood is them, at the end of it all, they kind of give you a wave over their shoulder as they walk away. Because you've invested all this, but they're just like, bye.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
getting on with my life now. Bye-bye. I'll just be back if I need some money.
Yeah, honestly, I'm so tired. I'd probably be fine with that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we did get to that point where like, woohoo.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
then, I mean, my kids don't likely listen to this anyway, but if they do, I don't care. But because I've told Sebastian this, like he got sick and then he like comes home for like a few days to just be around people and whatever, because he's on his own and I get that. And then like by the time he leaves, I'm like, I remember the 7,000 reasons why I hated you living here as an adult. Because it's one thing when they're living here as kids, because you can like lose your mind and say, clean your room, yes, pick up that, contribute something. But then when they are adults, it's a little bit of more of a thing,
It's about
because
roommate to roommate.
you're almost like roommates, but you're not.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like the roommate that thinks that you have like
Well, they forgot to be
$1 million that you don't mind spending on them every single day.
I know. Yeah.
Because there's food in the fridge and there's like, they don't really have to. And if the laundry does pile up, like you do it because you can't stand it lying around your house, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Were you that kind of parent where you could just can you just shut the bedroom door and let?
No,
No. Okay. Because I'm
yeah.
not.
I'm not either, and it just I've gotten better at it over the years, and it's taken a lot of practice to just shut the door of the room and remind myself that this is what my mentors remind me. They say everybody is on their own soul journey and they have to figure their own shit out. And so that's why I just try to remind myself that. Just try to remind myself. Let go
Sometimes I don't
control.
want them figuring out their soul journey in my space that I own.
Yeah, I know. It's just why I'm
Well, and I
yeah.
mean, the thing that got me the most, I will say, like clothes lying around, unmade beds, like I can deal with that. I didn't like it because I like open doors and
Right.
open spaces. So I didn't want to like they needed to but food in like food in a room.
We
Like,
have big rules around that too.
yeah, like there's no way.
No.
And you know, friends of mine are like, well, let them do their own laundry. No, because they put one pair of jeans in the washing machine and wash it. And then I have to pay for all that water and electricity and crap because they needed that pair of jeans. And no, it just doesn't work. So,
But what about the good things? Those were the.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, it is exactly what you said. It's the best and worst time of your life. I think that is like a brilliant way of saying it, because it is the best and worst time of your life.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. In the thick of it, I can't, if you were to say, well, what's good right now? I could not tell you. I couldn't tell you. But I know when I sit and reflect on pictures, and thank God for Facebook memory posts so I can actually remember good times, then I'd be like, oh yeah, those were great times. I can remember
Yeah, we did that.
But like, but
I
when
think
you're tired, it's just like, oh, why?
And your
Did
kids
I
are
agree to
how
this?
old? Like, remind me how old?
Just turned 18 and graduating from high school on Friday. Thank God. And 15, soon to be 16.
So you are in the thick of it. I have a friend with a 2 and a 4-year-old, and I say there's thick of it's kind of at both ends of the spectrum, and that is a thick of it. Like when they're that little and you're whatever. And the other end, when they're in high school, is a thick of it, because it is as much work to me to manage high school students as it is to manage toddlers.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, Mary Beth used to tell me all the time, it gets worse.
Well, you know what it does? It kind of gets better for a little tiny, like, there's like 7 to maybe 10 where it's kind of floaty, a little bit. It was here, I think, a little bit less than toddler and teenage.
Yeah, more independence, also more opinionated.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what your
Yeah,
issues
the
are.
person.
Like,
we had one opinionated child, and his timeout was to be alone in the room that to be in the room that we were, but nose against the wall and no talking.
oh yeah.
That was his timeout because he hated that. The other one wanted to be with us, so his timeout was alone in his room.
Whatever.
Man.
But yeah, I think those are great words for motherhood. That certainly hits a core with us because we have done a lot of reading about, shame.
Was it a year ago we were working through the Brene Brown stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if you do Brene Brown. The other person that I really like a lot, she's quite religious, but there's way more to her than that, is somebody named Kate Bowler.
Oh, I love her. I love her. She's amazing.
She's just so real, and she does have adversity, right?
Yeah.
And just the whole thing of how quickly we become ashamed of things that we have no control over in our lives.
Yeah. And a lot of that relates to perfectionism because we do try to control things so that we can feel better. We try to control things so that we can have more hope. Shame is very much related to control.
Yeah. No, that would be, and I try to have conversations with it's easier to have conversations with people who are not your children about things like this, but I have some young friends, and they're all like, oh, when I go into their house, oh, my house is so messy and I'm sorry and this and that, and I'm always like I'm just here to play with your kids, and I'm not here to judge you. And if you can get past the point where you are apologizing for things in your life all the time, just don't, because and definitely not to me. Do the best you can, really do the best you can, and then step away and just be happy with yourself, because we've only got so much to give, right?
Exactly.
And there's no point in living in shame.
No.
Carrying that.
Oh, I'm glad that you like Kate Bowler. I love her. I just think that she's just, I really do. I actually sent her an email to invite her to be on the podcast, but obviously she's way too busy for
you never know.
You know what? Of the famous people that I kind of reached out to, she was the only one that actually responded with so I think that's pretty
that's
genuine,
wonderful. Totally.
Genuine, right?
Yeah. I get that. I'm so glad to hear that, but also, I knew she'd be that way. I knew she'd reply.
Yeah.
You just
know, and I don't know that it was her. It was, but obviously it's their policy that they respond to people, which is kind, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and then the other question I had is what keeps you on track every day of your life?
Every morning I ask myself that. What is keeping me on track? I do a lot of things. So I am tied to my notebooks. I'm tied to my planner. I constantly write things down because the writing helps me to remember what I've got going on. It helps me break down these thoughts that might be in my head. That's really just taking the time every morning to just write what's on my mind, write what's got scheduled onto the calendar. I write it all down.
And I live by the highlighter.
I don't use the highlighter, so I underline things. So I guess it's the same thing.
But I met you when you had a binder.
I still have binders.
Or more than one binder. Just a second. Why is this not? Sorry, I just have a technology problem again. And I remember you had all these colored markers.
Yes, I still do.
I bought markers.
And you did nothing with them. I just want you to know that he did nothing with you. With them. I would I have tried for nigh on to 30 years to train him that you would just write, like, even now,
Training a husband.
Retired, I have my list of things in my book with time, like what I need to do. I like the household stuff. Everything is in there. I even put, like, I'm a big reader. Like, I read a ton of books.
Yeah.
I even put the books I'm reading, and I'd like to read about 100 pages of that book today. Like, I do all that, like all my knitting project, my sewing, everything is listed. So that is how, because I'm like you, I'll lose track of it.
And I can look at everything for the week. I know in my head what I'm doing, but I still sit down every morning and just kind of rewrite out like what my game plan is for the day. It always gets shattered. I mean, yesterday I sat down, it took me 2.5 hours to get through my emails. I only had 7 emails to do, but it's because my oldest daughter interrupted me 4 times, and then my husband interrupted me, and then my youngest interrupted me, and then the dogs had to have an issue, like just because of the constant interruptions. So I think learning to plan around planned interruptions is really a key to keeping it together.
And if you if you let go of the perfectionism, it's also easier to do that.
Yeah,
because my issue is with the list is to me it's a commitment because it's on paper. So if I don't do it, then I'm upset.
That's a mindset thing.
That is.
And shoving things to the next page is also inappropriate for me.
Yeah,
that's silly.
It's great that she does it.
I had that mindset problem for many years. It took a while to break that. Like, I did not have to cross everything off the list,
Yeah. No, and I mean, because being an elementary school principal is a lot like being a working from home mom.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's somebody at your door, their nose is bleeding, or someone's crying, or a teacher's buzzing you to say, I have to go to the bathroom. Can you cover my class?
Yeah, you don't have your children. You have everybody's children. And you don't have your husband. You have everybody's husband and their wives.
Plus their parent, like the kids and their parents. And then,
the teachers are kids too.
The teachers are. So, like, I really learned that I just had to be able to work on something for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, if I didn't get interrupted in those 10 minutes, I obviously kept going, but I was prepared that I had to be able to leave something and then come back to it without losing my mind. Because I didn't get big blocks of time to work on things.
Yeah. That's a real hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, for me especially, that I don't have big chunks of time. Like, I have dreams of being a novelist, right? And not dreams. I mean, I've written a couple books, but all of the writing books are like, you need to sit down and write 500 words a day, or you need to make sure you commit to 1 hour a day. And I'm like, that is not realistic for me. But it took me like almost 30 years to be like, I can't fit that mold. I can't fit that mold.
I bet you 99% of the people who give that advice are men.
They are.
Yeah. Have you ever read anything by Barbara Kingsolver?
Barbara Kingsolver.
Poisonwood Bible.
I've heard the name. I don't think I've read anything.
She just won the Pulitzer for Demon Copperhead.
Wow.
And so
good author.
She's fabulous. So I listened to Poisonwood Bible, and then I read Demon Copperhead because I do both. And then I just listened to one of her books called Flight Patterns. And it's just brilliant. But I do now, I'm like interested in reading about her. Like, does she sit for 5 hours a day? Like, she's prolific in her writing, right?
Right.
So but writing, like other things, is a gift, right? Like, you have it in you, but I do still think that life can interfere with that.
Yeah. I've been lucky to stumble across writers who do take a different take on it. Like, there's the 10-minute novelist, which she's got a whole Facebook page, 10 minutes at a time you can write a novel. I also follow, her name's Sarah Cannon. I think her YouTube is Heart Breathings, And she is super duper about planning. Like she's a novelist and has written a ton of young adult books, like a ton, like 13 or something like that. But the core of her message is about, you know, taking care of yourself and learning how to make time with the time that you have. She has a planning course that I took called, I think it's called HB90. And one of the lessons in there, she's all like, everybody tells you about block scheduling and putting it on the digital calendar and scheduling the tasks that you have to do. And she walks you through her rendition of that. But the first thing that she says is you need to take a hard look at what your actual week looks like. And if it looks like where you have a day job and you only have 2 hours at the end of every day, you only have 2 hours at the end of every day. So whatever your goals are, whether it's writing or whatever, has to fit within those 2 hours. So it's really like going way back instead of, I'm going to do all these 14 goals. Yeah. I only have 2 hours a day to commit to this. So what is important for that 2 hours?
Exactly. And like for me, I mean, I'm not working right now. I have my projects and things, but like yesterday, I spent the whole day with babysitting. So therefore I can't write a whole bunch of things into my planner. And I've had to like tone that down a bit because then I come home from babysitting. I'm like, okay, well, I'm tired. Like I just spent the day with a 2 and a 4-year-old and, did all that stuff. And I'm not going to do all those things that I thought I was going to do when I left at 7 o'clock this morning because, it's just not realistic, right?
Totally.
But, yeah. Well, the last question seems sort of redundant because, I mean, I can see just by talking to you the ways that you live. Like my big thing is to live your best life. The best life that you can, and I always say I want to be better tomorrow than I am today, kind of like the Maya Angelou sort of thing. Like
that's the question.
It is, how do you live your best life?
Knowing and accepting that it is a constant state of change, growth, and healing that never ends.
Yeah.
And knowing that every day I can heal more, every day I can grow more, every day I can accept more change. Little baby steps, Oh,
well, I really like that it's every day because that's kind of cyclical rather than linear. And I think Western culture is too linear.
Yeah.
We don't accept the circle of anything.
Well, and I think one of the bigger things that I learned to accept, and that was part of like with his diagnosis and some of the things that happened to us in this year, is that you actually have to be able to hold happiness and sorrow and good and bad and crap and nice all in your hands all at the same time.
Yeah, nothing is isolated. It's all it can all be experienced at the same time. I can be completely devastated at the things that my kids said to me today and still really happy about the email that I got.
Yeah.
Complimenting my work.
And I think that is I think that's missed a lot in especially like this striving, and I really don't like the word happiness. I like that deeper word of joy because I feel like happiness is an ice cream cone and joy is like
a state of being.
Yes, and more living the life that you have no matter what sort of gets thrown at you.
Yeah. I love learning, so I'm always in classes, and I'm in or I just wrapped up a 9-month program called the Spiritual Warrior Program with my teacher Ananta, and that's one of the things that she just really stresses in Ayurvedic culture. Buddhism is very much the same way, that it is our clinging to this idea that we must be happy all the time, that we must be doing all of these amazing things, that's what just drives us nuts, And so then when we don't achieve those things, we spiral into these pools of despair and sadness, and things are never going to get better. But when we can I struggled with this for a long time. They always say, let go, surrender. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And only recently have I discovered, and I'll forget about it, I'm sure, and I'll get really mad about this idea again, because that's what happens to me, that it's just letting yourself experience all of the emotions without letting it own you, with just saying, I am sad, rather than I'm just so miserable and I must
my life is terrible
and I must show that in everything I do. And so to me, letting go is the difference between being owned by your emotions and letting yourself experience the emotion.
Yeah, that whole thing about, a lot of the things that I've read is you have to kind of feel the emotion all the way through till you come back out on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, yeah, I felt really like pissed off at that person. I felt that. Okay, yeah, no, okay. I got to go on with,
So much of society, I feel like, is out of touch with our bodies and these sensations. And I started just listening to conversations out and about and just seeing how people communicate about their emotions, and people just, they don't have that connection with themselves. It just is. So they're not even really experiencing it. They'll have the motions of it, like they're depressed, so they don't complete their work on time, or things like that. But they, because we can't really connect in and see what's really going on, then we can't actually experience what it's like when it starts to come in, and we don't really know what it looks like when it starts to go out.
And then there's no, and I like there's a strategy for this. That used to be my line when I was a principal, right? And someone would come to my door and say, well, this kid, blah, blah, blah. And I would say, well, there's a strategy for that. Like we need to put something in place.
Yeah.
You can't just say, okay, well, I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, or I'm this, or I'm that. You have to actually work at it.
Yeah, and work through it. So if you're really angry, that kid punched me, I'm really angry.
Yeah.
So what does that feel like in your body? And where does it hurt? And how does it feel? And so what if you did this? And what if you did that? And soon it starts to dissipate. I always say that, like, that's one of the core pieces to mental health that we've really dropped the ball on in education, in our homes, and it becomes a regular cycle, is not working through how to process emotions. So that we heal from them rather than react to them.
Yeah. And to say, like, when kids would come in and they'd be like furiously upset from something at recess, I said, yeah, I understand why you're upset. Like, you are angry right now, or you are frustrated, or you are. And the other thing is about feelings, right? Is what do we have?
4 words. Basically.
Angry, sad, like
happy and bored.
And bored. When
there's
most of the time, it's not that at all.
So,
most of the time, it's worry.
Worry, yes.
We read a book called Permission to Feel, and it's an educator who's trying to give children more words, more vocabulary along a whole spectrum of emotions, so that you can kind of parse things down a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'll send you the graphic of it. It's really, really
cool. There's all these different emotions that you can actually identify, like lots and lots and lots of different words that you can use to describe emotions, right? And one of my favorite programs,
I have it up in my office so that if a faculty member or student come in, I can say, so how are you feeling today? It's actually led to some pretty good conversations.
One of my favorite programs when I was a principal was the Roots of Empathy program, where you bring the little baby in. And so a grade 1 class adopts this little newborn baby. So after they sort of come in, like, once the mother is comfortable bringing the baby in, and the baby comes like once a month until they are like, then you have their first birthday party. And they talk about, well, the baby's crying right now. What do you think the baby's crying? Is the baby this, that? And they really start to experience what it is like to have empathy. And I think there's a lot of empathy missing in our world.
There's books and books on that. I used to work years and years ago when I was in college with children with reactive attachment disorder, which I I assume
Yes,
you're
I
familiar
do.
with in the
Yeah,
education.
Yeah.
And that I remember in one of the trainings that I was in, the trainer was talking about how, listen, the way society is moving with this disconnect from our bodies,
Mhm.
with the more and more people focused on careers outside of the home. Not, he wasn't centering this on women, by the way,
No.
but that because we are putting our children into childcare, earlier and earlier and earlier, that we are going to have a huge growth in attachment disorders of varying degrees. And that's what, sure as shit, here we are 3 decades later,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
like he really hit the nail on the head,
Yeah.
that it's a real, there's just something really sorely missing. We have disconnected from our core in such a way that
Yeah.
the material is the priority.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. Well, I feel like I want to end on a more positive note.
Are you going to do your speed run?
Oh, yeah, my speed.
Wait. Before that,
Yes.
because we do have some crafty listeners.
Oh, yes.
What can you tell me? Like, what are the upcoming trends in the in the yarn world?
In the yarn world, I don't know about yarn specifically,
or just in the craft world,
but I foresee knitting, fashion-wise, pattern-wise, I definitely would be looking forward to more cables.
Yeah.
Some burgundy red I foresee coming in, and then vests. I'm telling you, I think vests and turtlenecks especially, I foresee a comeback coming soon.
That would be nice.
Wow.
How long are we going to have the drop shoulder baggy boxy thing again?
Oh, God.
I was so disgusted. I was like, oh, no, all that work that I learned on how to do beautiful shaping. And now it's all gone to waste and back to the boxy look.
And I think the boxy look is because it's so easy, and people right now just are really craving simplicity.
Yep.
Yeah.
And basics and foundational.
Michelle Obama wants to knit, so she has to have something easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it is more zen if you're just doing 4 rectangles.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
it totally is. But now I see a little more texture coming back. Cool. I think we're in the throes right now of like the basic, and you'll see it all over the news feeds on knitting pattern sites and stuff. It's your basic stockinette stitch sweater with ribbed cuffs and ribbed hems and ribbed necklines, and they're all the same, and they're all being bought and they're all being knit. So really, people just are really in the throes of simple basics right now, which is beautiful. But I'm like, this just goes to show that there is no one way to doing things. So it's really beautiful
and it is, again, the cycle. Right?
Yeah.
Everything has a cycle. Yeah. Okay, so I always do 2 drop. I forget what I call them.
I don't know.
I can't remember. Anyway, just whatever. The first one is, what is your pet peeve?
Pet peeve. People who don't use the Oxford comma, obviously.
That, yes.
And being late. I can't stand it when people are late.
That's good. I think you and I are like sisters from another mother or something.
Charles actually used to say that. He's like,
oh, did he?
You are so much like my wife.
And then the second one is, what is your favorite way to spend a day?
Favorite way to spend the day? In my pajamas, on the couch, either watching usually Psych, or Jurassic Park, or Friends. I have a series of just my favorites.
Yeah, I'm like that too.
Just my favorites. Either knitting, reading, or writing. And eating Bojangles. It's my vice.
What's a Bojangle?
That's a Southern food thing. It's Southern Cajun fried chicken tenders and fries, and it's just my favorite.
See, okay, you must have that in mind, because we have this place here called Louisiana. What is it called?
Popeyes.
It's nothing like Popeyes. I mean, it's of the same family of Popeyes, but Popeyes is hard dried out chicken.
What is?
Bojangles.
Bojangles is hard dried out?
No, Popeyes is.
Popeyes is hard.
Yeah.
But he said, "Oh, I would just love to eat that," because he can't, right? He can't eat any of that. So it was just kind of
even once in a while. Even
No.
once in a while.
Really?
Really?
Did you hear me? No.
The gluten will just totally.
Oh, that's right. I forget. I always forget you are gluten free. I always forget. Yeah.
Like seriously gluten.
Yeah. I decided years ago that you would have to pry bread from my cold dead fingers before I could give it up. I always say that. I'm like,
feel so crummy.
I couldn't be gluten free, and I know that it's a real disorder. I have friends, totally under. I had a friend who her kid knocked down a box of cereal over the refrigerator, and just the dust made her so sick for like 4 days.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to belittle or demean. I totally I don't want to be offensive.
But
I know how difficult
your
it was.
Bojangles chicken and enjoy every single bite.
That's right.
Because that's what we should do.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this was fabulous. Went in a lot of places that I'm so happy to get to know you that in this way. And I hope it's just the beginning of some other cool stuff that we could actually maybe meet sometime face to face. That would be
awesome.
fun.
That'd
totally
be so
awesome. Good. All right. Thanks.
Say hi to Jeremy.
I will.
All right. Have a great day. Thank
you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for episode 88 of No Room for Phonies on motherhood and careers and hurricanes with Tabitha. We hope that you are inspired. We'll be back for episode 89 where we talk about some of the highlights of this particular episode.
Good night.